that leads us to like sort of telling you some more about the book. You know, there's a lot of books out there who talk about how to do well in business. They have different perspectives on them. Even books that actually target the African American community. But we wanted to bring a different perspective to it, a 21st century perspective to the ideas of diversity cast broadly, but more importantly about success and greatness. So we talk about game changing, right? A term that people have been throwing around as of late. We think it's because they've been hearing us talk about the book, but maybe that's not true. So the game-changing aspect, so that implies that there's some game that we're trying to change or to address. So let me toss it back to you. What were we talking about when we said game-changing and the ever-changing game?
So many of you, if not all of you, are familiar with the glass ceiling. The phrase was coined in an article in the New York Times, I want to say somewhere circa the 1970s. And it was meant at the time to describe the experience of women, and white women. If you think about the adjective noun, glass and ceiling, it implied two things. One, that there's this invisible barrier that you don't see coming, and then you kind of bump up against it. And ceiling being that it's limiting to how high you could advance within an organization. Our argument is, and in the book, is that the glass ceiling, which has become the kind of long-standing proxy for all things, all barriers to minorities and women, not just women anymore, but minorities, that it is no longer a relevant metaphor. Not that there aren't still barriers, because there are most assuredly still barriers. The metaphor itself, if you think about the metaphor, the barriers are no longer invisible. We know quite clearly what the barriers are. And there are those who have actually overcome those barriers. And so the ceiling as well is no longer relevant, because you can't have Ken Chenault as the CEO of American Express or Franklin Raines as the CEO of Fannie Mae and say there was a ceiling, because they've broken through it. The ceiling has been shattered. And so what's a more relevant metaphor in the 21st century? We came up with what we describe as the adjective noun of the ever-changing game. Now, why did we choose the adjective of ever-changing and the noun of game? We chose game not because of the first definition of game, which is, if you look at Merriam-Webster, the definition of game is twofold. One is something about an activity from which you derive amusement. And that's the furthest from our definition of game. The issues of professional advancement are far too serious to draw the analogy of amusement. The second definition is on money, which is any activity undertaken that is regarded as a contest involving rivalry, strategy, and struggle. Any activity undertaken that is regarded as a contest that involves rivalry, strategy, and struggle. And if you've ever been in a professional environment, you can ask yourself the question, is it a contest? You better believe it. Does it involve rivalry? It sure does. Does it involve struggle? It did for me. It does for me. And does it involve struggle? Most assuredly. And so, it is a game that is subject to both spoken and unspoken rules. But those rules are evolving, those rules change, and they're often differentially applied, depending on who you're talking about. Hence the adjective ever-changing. And so we use the ever-changing game for a number of reasons to kind of invoke popular culture. You got he got game, she's game, I'm game, don't try to game me. I mean, there's a whole lot of popular culture references to game, which we believe kind of tap into the demographic that we're targeting. But also, the metaphor, if the glass ceiling conjured the images of a ladder that you climb, the game conjures the metaphor of a playing field upon which teams compete to try to win. And it moves beyond an individual to a team. It moves beyond corporate America to engage and embrace other pathways that others pursue. Journalists, nonprofit, pastors, elected officials. There's a game of politics where winning is defined as being elected, which doesn't always mean you're the best candidate. There's a game of business, which I play in. I'm a competitor in that game, where the rules, where winning may be defined as making millions or billions of dollars. There's a game of academics, or academia, where the nuances of how you accomplish tenure are very nuanced, very subtle. very particular. And so there's a game of everything. Journalism, we've probably got some folks here that are looking to go into business, or have been in business, perhaps just a few. And so the game and the title as it implies, or the subtitle rather, 10 game-changing strategies to achieve success and find greatness. Jeff's going to talk in a moment about how we organized the book into 4 parts. Learning the game, part 1. Playing the game, part 2. Mastering the game. I'm getting old, man. You were going to help me if I got caught.
I got you.
Mastering the game, part 3. And then 4, redefining the game. And Jeff will talk about exactly what we mean by all 4 of